In the beginning, there was Eru, the creator, who in the world of Arda was called Ilúvatar, bringing forth the timeless halls and great void, before forming living beings known as the Ainur, kindled by the flame imperishable. Melkor, greatest of the Ainur, was granted vast power and knowledge, while also sharing in all the gifts of his brethren. Yet his unique abilities also made him stand apart from the others, becoming more impatient and ambitious, desiring that other life forms be created to fill the emptiness of the void. His desires even led him to journey away from the timeless halls, searching for the flame imperishable, so that he too could have the power to create new life forms. Yet in spending so much time alone, he became more independent, with his thoughts growing further apart from the others. Eru then taught the Ainur to sing, and when they were ready, sat back and hearkened as they performed the Ainulindale, pleased that through them great beauty had been wakened into song. However, the perfect harmony of the music was soon interrupted by Melkor, who began twisting the notes to sing in his own manner that conflicted with the others. Yet as his voice grew more prominent, some of the other Ainur abandoned the original theme and joined in his harmony. For a time, Eru listened to this war of sound, until his very throne was a raging storm, and so introduced a second theme, more powerful than the first. But the war continued as Melkor's music rose in uproar, becoming so dominant many of the Ainur were dismayed and stopped their singing. Eru then made a third theme, deep, wide, and beautiful, but slow and blended with an immeasurable sorrow, while Melkor's music was aggressive, loud, and endlessly repetitive. However, the greatest of the Ainur continued to challenge each new theme, until the creator struck one final chord as piercing as the light of the eye of Ilúvatar to end the battle and leave the timeless halls in silence. Melkor was scolded for bringing such discord into the notes, and was told that all actions, even those thought different and unique, had their foundation in Eru and only served to contribute to his plan. Upon hearing the rebuke, Melkor was filled with shame, but also deep anger, which he hid away. Then the creator left them, traveling into the void, and so the Ainur followed, until he revealed what their music had created, showing them the vision of Arda, seeing the lands of Middle-earth and Aman, as well as new life forms, known as the Children of Ilúvatar. He then showed them how each of the Ainur created elements of the vision, including the discord of Melkor. When the vision ended, the Ainur were astounded and wanted it to be made real, and so Eru responded to their pleas, and formed Ea, inviting them to enter this new realm on the condition that they could not return to the timeless halls until all the events of this universe had completed. Many of them agreed and departed for Ea, where the strongest became the Valar and the lesser became the Maiar, working together to form Arda, a world of land and seas, in order to bring life to the vision they had seen. These Ainur followed Manwë, king of the Valar, the most powerful of their kind, save for his brother Melkor, who also entered Ea, desiring mastery of the world and lordship over the children of Ilúvatar. The Valar created a flat world with a perfectly symmetrical continent surrounded by ocean. However, soon Melkor went on a rampage, disrupting their work and waging the First War. Though the powerful Dark Lord was winning the struggle, he was ultimately defeated when Tulkas the Strong became the last Ainur to descend from the timeless halls, joining the Valar to crush their enemy. However, the war had marred the original design of the Valar, who chose to make their home on the island of Almarin in the center of the continent. To bring light to the world, the Valar built the two great lamps, placing Iluin in the north and Ormal in the south, bringing about the spring of Arda, when plant and animal life flourished all over the world. But eventually, Melkor returned in secret and traveled north, where he built the fortress of Utumno, the base from which he would once again wage war against the Valar. Some of the Maiar then turned against the others and joined the Dark Lord, including Sauron and those that came to be known as the Balrogs. Sauron was originally named Mairon, meaning the admirable, and served under Aule the smith, becoming a greatly skilled craftsman. Yet his love of order and perfection soon consumed him, causing him to embrace Melkor, becoming a spy for the Dark Lord, before leaving the Valar and joining his new master. Melkor and his minions then attacked, sending a blight to poison the land, and shattered the two lamps, plunging the world into darkness. The assault was so devastating, it shattered the continent, making three distinct areas, with Aman to the west, Middle-earth at the center, and what came to be known as the Land of the Sun in the east. Almaren, the home of the Valar, was destroyed, and so they went west and founded Valinor, where they planted the two trees, Telperion and Laurelin, bringing light to Aman, allowing for plant and animal life to once again flourish. During these years, Middle-earth remained in darkness, ruled over by Melkor, who based himself in Utumno, though he also built Angband as a second fortress in the west to keep watch against invasion, choosing Sauron to defend it in his name. Meanwhile, the Valar built up Valinor, with each of them working in accordance to their gifts bestowed by Ilúvatar. There was Manwë, Lord of the Wind, and King of the Valar, who made his home at the summit of Taniquetil, the highest mountain in the world, and used eagles as scouts to watch over Middle-earth. His wife was Varda, the Star Queen, who brought light into the world, first with the two lamps, then the two trees, and eventually the stars, sun, and moon. There was Ulmo, King of the Sea, one of the chief architects of Arda, who lived in the underwater palace of Ulmonon. Aule the Smith, also called the Maker, was a powerful Valar who delighted in crafting great material works. In his impatience for the coming of new life forms, he created the Dwarven race, but was forced to put them to sleep by command of the Creator until the children of Ilúvatar had awoken. Aule's wife was Yavanna, the giver of fruits, who created the world's plant and animal life. After her husband created the dwarves, she approached Manwë with her concerns that the children might destroy her great works, and so it was decided that tall, tree-like beings known as Ents would serve as shepherds of the forest, protecting Yavanna's creations. There was Otto May, the great hunter and lord of forests, who had his own woodlands in Valinor, but also roamed the lands of Middle-earth. His wife, Vanna, the Ever-Young, was the younger sister of Yavanna and a lover of all things that grow. Flowers bloomed in her presence, and it was her love for the golden tree Laurelin that preserved some of its light and aided in the creation of the sun. Namo, also known as Mandos, was the judge of the dead, ruling over the halls of Mandos, where the spirits of the deceased would dwell while they awaited their ultimate fate. His wife, Vaire, was called the Weaver, and made the tapestry of life, weaving the story of the world onto the walls of the halls of Mandos. Irmo, also known as Lorien, master of dreams and illusions, was the brother of Mandos, and together were known as the Feanturi, the masters of spirits. His wife was Este, the Valar of rest and healer of hurts, who watched over the wellness of all creatures. Then there was Tulkas, champion of the Valar, the most warlike of them all, who forever remained the bitterest of enemies to the Dark Lord. His wife was Nessa, the dancer, sister of Otto May, who was known for her incredible speed and love of swift creatures such as deer. Then lastly, there was Nienna, the Lady of Mercy, sister of Mandos and Lorien, who felt great sadness and pity for the tragedies of the world. The greatest of her pupils would one day become the wizard Gandalf, whose love and empathy for the races of Middle-earth led him to lead the fight against Sauron in the Third Age. With Valinor thriving and the Valar eager to meet the children of Ilúvatar, Varda, the wife of Manwë, brought about the noontide of the blessed, creating the stars in the sky to bring light back to the rest of the world, allowing for the first of the children to awaken and walk the lands of Middle-earth. These free-thinking creatures of beauty and wisdom came to be known as elves, and were unlike any other creature in the world, as they came directly from the mind of Ilúvatar and were granted the gift of immortality. Waking in the land of Cuiviénen, it was Melkor who first discovered them and started capturing those who wandered alone in the forests, twisting their minds with darkness and corruption in order to breed a new race known as the Orcs to serve the Dark Lord. Roughly a century after the awakening of the elves, many of the early dwarves also awoke in the east, such as the Iron Fists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, and Stonefoots, who possibly settled the Red Mountains. Others, however, awoke further west, with Durin the Deathless settling the Longbeard clan in the fortress of Khazad-dûm within the Misty Mountains, while the Broadbeams and Firebeards built Nogrod and Belegost in the Blue Mountains. The Ents also awoke in these early years, roaming the vast forests of Middle-earth, and coming into contact with the elves, who taught them how to speak, imparting a desire to learn new things and expand their knowledge. According to Treebeard, possibly the oldest living being in all of Middle-earth, the race of trolls later created by Melkor were formed in mockery of the Ents, just as the Orcs were a corrupted version of the elves. Eventually, the great hunter Otto May discovered what Melkor was doing with the elder children, and returned to Valinor to reveal all he knew. Outraged by his actions, the Valar and Maiar marched against the Dark Lord in the war for sake of the elves, defeating his forces at Angband in the Battle of the Powers, and sending part of their army to protect the elves from the rest of the conflict. Melkor then retreated into Utumno, where he was besieged for years, until they breached his defenses, leaving Tulkas the Strong to cast him down, taking the Dark Lord to Valinor in chains. Yet despite their victory, the Valar did not discover the mighty vaults and hidden caverns of Melkor's fortresses, where many evil things still lingered, and also failed to capture many of his other servants, including Sauron. The devastation of the war caused yet another reshaping of the continents. Yet with Melkor sentenced to 3 ages of captivity in the halls of Mandos, there came a time of peace, where the children of Ilúvatar once again roamed the forests freely. Desiring to bring the elves to Aman under their protection, the Valar sent Otto May to meet with them, bringing back 3 ambassadors to see the light of the trees of Valinor. The ambassadors then returned to Middle-earth and convinced many of the elves to join them in a great journey west. Yet not all would go, and so the elves fractured into the Avari, who remained in Cuiviénen, and the Eldar, who departed. The Eldar were then further divided into 3 groups, with the Vanyar following their leader Ingwe, the Noldor following Finwë, and the Teleri led by Elwë. Yet as they traveled, Elwë heard the singing of Melian, a Maya who once tended the gardens of Lorien, but left Valinor to explore the forests of Middle-earth. Elwë was entranced by her beauty and voice, and when they touched hands, a spell was cast which froze them in place for many years. The Teleri, alarmed by the disappearance of their leader, stayed behind to search for him, while the Vanyar and Noldor continued their journey west, ferried across the Sea of Belegir upon an island sent by Ulmo. When Elwë could not be found, the Teleri broke apart, with some continuing on to Valinor, while others, having grown attached to these lands, settled in Middle-earth. Many of those Teleri that continued west came to inhabit the island Ferry, which came to be known as Tol Eressëa, settling off the coast of Aman, where their people became expert shipbuilders. When at last Melian and Elwë awoke from the incantation, they were deeply in love and went on to rule over the Sindarin elves of the kingdom of Doriath. After 3 ages spent in captivity, Melkor was once again brought before the Valar to plead his case. The Dark Lord, eager for freedom and revenge, feigned regret for his past actions, claiming that he wanted to return to the light of Eru, and his brother Manwë, being so good-hearted, believed the lie, allowing him to go free. Yet many others remained wary of Melkor, watching him closely, and so he was patient, continuing with his ruse by being helpful and acting reformed, while in secret he plotted against the Valar and the elves who he despised. Slowly he began sowing discord among them, choosing to target the elf Fëanor, eldest son of the Noldor High King Finwë. Fëanor was a powerful elf of great skill and renown, responsible for the creation of the Silmarils, 3 gems which contained light from the 2 trees, and were so precious that no one, not even their creator, could ever reproduce their likeness again. Although Fëanor was among those who did not trust Melkor, the Dark Lord used trickery to convince him that his younger half-brother, Fingolfin, was plotting to usurp his place as heir to the throne. Enraged, Fëanor publicly threatened Fingolfin with death, and so was exiled in punishment, making his home in the fortress of Formenos. Finwë, his father, joined him in exile until Fëanor finally realized he had been deceived and returned to make peace. However, with Fëanor away from Formenos, Melkor and his new ally, the Ungoliant, a primordial evil in the form of a giant spider, revealed his master plan, plunging Aman into darkness by destroying the 2 trees. Melkor then moved against Formenos, killing Fëanor's father, Finwë, and stealing the Silmarils before departing for Middle-earth. When Fëanor learned what occurred, he was consumed with rage and renamed Melkor Morgoth, the Black Enemy, swearing an oath to recapture the Silmarils by any means necessary, then leading an army of Noldor towards the coast, where they demanded ships from the Teleri to cross the sea. When they were refused, Fëanor and those most loyal to him slew the Teleri in what came to be known as the First Kinslaying, after which they were cursed by Mandos and forbidden from returning to Valinor. After the theft of the Silmarils and journey to Middle-earth, Melkor and the Ungoliant turned against each other, fighting for possession of the jewels. After consuming the light of the 2 trees, Ungoliant proved so powerful she nearly overcame the Dark Lord, but his screams alerted the nearby Balrogs, sleeping underneath the ruined fortress of Angband, who responded to their master's call and chased her away into the south, where she became mother to the great spiders. With Melkor returned to his seat of power, he gathered together his armies, intent on ruling over the continent. However, he faced resistance from the elves, who remained behind during the great journey west, resulting in the First Battle of Beleriand, the initial conflict in the War of Great Jewels. This battle saw Morgoth and his lieutenants Sauron and Gothmog leading their forces against an alliance of Sindarin and Lyquendi elves, fighting alongside the dwarves of Nogrod and Belegost. Although the alliance was successfully able to repel the invasion of the east, the cost was heavy and victory remained incomplete, as the Sindarin elves who dwelt in the havens of the Falas under Lord Círdan remained under siege. However, King Thingol had seen enough of war, and so did not march to help his kin in the west, instead summoning all those who wished to live in peace, and bringing them to Doriath, where Queen Melian used her powers to place a spell upon the land, creating the Girdle of Melian, an invisible fence that hid their city from outsiders. In addition, no help came from the dwarves who retreated into their mountains, nor from the Green Elves who saw their king Denethor slain in battle, and afterwards returned to the forests of Ossiriand, pledging to live in secrecy and refusing to participate in future battles. However, relief finally came for the elves of the western coast when the Noldor following Feanor arrived in the lands of Lamoth, and immediately went to war against the Dark Lord, forcing his armies to abandon the siege and march north. Engaging in the Dagor Nuin Gileath, the Noldor swiftly defeated the enemy, but Feanor became so enraptured in battle fever, he led a charge to follow after those in retreat, leading him to be surrounded by Balrogs as he approached the fortress of Angband. Though his sons soon arrived and drove the enemy back, they were too late to save their father, who with his final breaths cursed Angband 3 times over before he died, his fiery spirit so powerful it burned his body to ash. And so it now fell to his sons, led by Maedhros, the eldest, to fulfill the Oath of Feanor and recover the Silmarils from their eternal enemy. Meanwhile, Fingolfin and his followers had been abandoned by Feanor after the kinslaying, in which they participated only because they arrived late and were not aware the Noldor initiated the conflict. Although Feanor promised to send back the ships they took, he instead burned them upon arriving in Middle-earth, forcing Fingolfin to lead his people across the treacherous mountains of Helcaraxe, the northern land bridge to the east. The journey was long and many elves died along the way, but eventually they arrived and reunited with the remaining Noldor who had been scattered after the death of Feanor. With the 2 trees gone, the Valar used their last flower and fruit to create the sun and moon in the sky, and so the race of men awoke in the lands of Hildorian. Love audiobooks? Then be sure to check out Audible, where they have the world's largest collection available. Simply sign up through the link in the description box below and get 2 free audiobooks to start out. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Sir Cotton, Varian the Soft Bastard Beesbury, Mebble, and Tormus Woods Whisper. If you would like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like and subscribe, and click on the links to see more.